The military training compound on Virix 9 was not known for diplomacy, softness, or mercy. It was a fortress forged in iron, used to forging warriors in return. Perched on the border between neutral space and the core territories of the Zhani Empire, it had trained generations of elite shock troopers, four-armed titans bred for brutality and loyalty. Among them, combat was sacred, strength was law. Weakness was unforgivable. And now, standing amid these towering warriors was a single anomaly, a human cadet, barely 5.5 feet tall, silent, alone, and completely ignored until they couldn't ignore her anymore. Her name was Cadet Maya Rios, and her presence in the compound was not by choice. Under a new interspecies military cooperation treaty between the Terran Republic and the Yushani Empire, Earth was allowed to send a limited number of cadets to select foreign academies. The goal was diplomacy, skill exchange, and so-called unity. But everyone on Virix 9 saw it differently. The Yushani cadets ridiculed her from the moment she arrived. With her slim build, soft voice, and quiet demeanor, she looked fragile. Human physiology seemed absurd next to their armored hides and redundant organs. Jokes flew fast about how she'd break in the first exercise or how she'd be gone before the second week. But Maya wasn't there to impress anyone. She watched, she trained, she studied the Yushani with sharp eyes. Every insult bounced off her without reaction. Every exercise she completed quietly, efficiently, and without complaint. She never bragged. She never got angry. And perhaps that was what unnerved them most. She wasn't trying to prove anything. Then General Threx Vortha arrived. Vortha was a legend among the Shani. He had led planetary sieges, personally slain dozens of enemy champions, and survived a direct hit from an orbital railgun. His massive form, standing 3 meters tall, clad in scarred obsidian battle armor, struck fear in everyone on the base. He had 4 arms, 1 cybernetic after a brutal duel, and a face hardened into a permanent scowl. His presence alone silenced the entire training yard. Vortha despised humans. To him, they were soft-skinned diplomats who used words where force was needed. Their sudden rise in galactic politics offended him, and seeing a human cadet among his people was an insult. During morning drills, Vortha descended from the observation platform. His boots shook the ground with every step. Instructors and cadets froze as he stormed across the sand toward Maya. She didn't flinch. "You," he barked in his native Yushani dialect. "Are you defective or simply deaf?" She gave no reply. "I asked you a question, whelp," he growled, towering over her. "When an officer speaks, you answer." Still, she stared at him, unafraid, unreadable. A flicker of rage lit in his alien eyes. With a grunt of disdain, Vortha reached out and grabbed her shoulder, a firm grip meant to intimidate, to shake, to remind her of her place. To him, it was barely a touch. To any Shani, it would be nothing. But in that moment, the air changed. To everyone watching, it was a simple contact. To Maya, it was an act of dominance, a hostile grip. And she was trained from the age of 12 to recognize and respond to threats in under a second. In that brief instant, something ancient flickered in her brain. The Terran combat reflex, honed through wars humans never boasted about, through survival on a death world others refused to visit. Her eyes narrowed. Her stance shifted, and then the screaming began. What happened next took only 4 seconds, but it would be studied for decades. Summary of Part 1 themes. Maya is underestimated and mocked at an alien combat training facility. General Vortha is a powerful, respected alien war hero who sees humans as weak and unworthy. Vortha attempts to intimidate Maya through physical contact. Her reaction is immediate, brutal, and will define everything that follows. Time is a strange thing in combat. A second can stretch, bend, and snap. For the Yishani watching on the training field of Virix 9, those 4 seconds felt like a lifetime. 4 seconds in which everything they thought they knew about strength, dominance, and humans was shattered. It began the moment General Threx Vortha's hand clamped down on Cadet Maya Rios' shoulder. He expected her to tremble, to back down. Instead, she moved fluidly, precisely, like a storm cutting through silence. Maya didn't strike with rage or panic. She acted with discipline, the kind only learned through relentless training on Earth's Tier 7 defense academies, institutions reserved for humans destined to lead, protect, or destroy. Her body moved like a machine fed by instinct and calculation. Every motion was efficient. Nothing was wasted. Second 1. She stepped into Vortha's space, minimizing the reach advantage of his towering frame. Simultaneously, she rotated her shoulder under his arm, aligning her center of gravity with his extended limb. Her elbow came up hard under the joint. Pop. The sound echoed across the field. Vortha's upper right arm dislocated instantly. Second 2. Before his cybernetic enhancements could compensate, Maya pivoted on her heel, grabbing the forearm of the same limb. With perfect timing and torque, she twisted it inward, using his own size and momentum against him. Metal strained. Synthetic nerves crackled. Snap. The cybernetic limb bent the wrong way, imploded from its own force. Sparks sprayed from the elbow joint. A piece of armor clattered to the dirt. Vortha grunted, half shock, half rage. Second 3. Maya dropped low and swept his leg in a clean arc. His balance, already compromised by the lock on his shoulder, was gone. The towering general toppled, hitting the training sand with a thunderous crash. His 3 remaining limbs scrambled. One reached for a sidearm. The others clawed at the ground. Second 4. Maya placed a single boot on his ruined arm and stared down at him, eyes cold, calculating. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't shaking. Move again and I'll end your combat career. Her voice was low and unshaken. And then she stepped away. The entire yard was silent. Dozens of Yishani cadets, instructors, and soldiers stood frozen, watching a human cadet calmly walk away from the most feared general in their empire. She didn't flee. She didn't gloat. She simply returned to her line and stood at ease. General Vortha roared in agony, clutching the sparking remains of his cybernetic arm. His honor was broken. His body worse. His command staff rushed to him, their faces unreadable. They had never seen him defeated. Certainly not by a species considered lesser, a species with no natural armor, no redundant organs, no claws, and only 2 arms. And yet Maya Rios had brought him down in 4 seconds. Flat. The instructors looked uncertain. Some glanced toward the human, perhaps expecting an apology or fear. But Maya only reached for her datapad and began reviewing her training schedule. Business as usual. One of the alien instructors, Commander Relsh, finally found his voice. Explain. Yourself, Cadet, he demanded, more confused than angry. Maya turned her head calmly. Under the Interspecies Combat Conduct Accords, Article 9, unsolicited contact from a superior officer may be interpreted as hostile action. I am authorized to neutralize the threat. Her tone was clinical, almost detached. She wasn't defending herself. She was stating protocol. Commander Relsh opened his mouth, then closed it. The protocol was real and she had followed it perfectly. A ripple passed through the other cadets. Some of the older Yoshani murmured. Others looked at Maya not with ridicule, but with caution. She hadn't lost control. She had waited, measured, executed. No ceremony. No fanfare. Just pure, practiced lethality. And that was what scared them most that day. A shift began in the compound. The joke stopped. The casual bullying vanished. Maya wasn't just the human anymore. She was the reminder that her kind had survived. On a planet where apex predators were born every week, where humanity's worst wars weren't even recorded in alien history logs because they were too old, too brutal, and the message was clear: don't touch the human. The aftermath of General Vortha's defeat did not end with the snapping of his cybernetic arm. If anything, that moment was just the spark. What followed was a quiet, simmering storm, one that reached far beyond the walls of the Virix 9 training compound. In the hours after the incident, a full investigation was launched, not to punish Maya Rios, but to understand her. Recordings of the incident were pulled from security feeds, slowed down frame by frame, and dissected by analysts from 3 species. The footage was reviewed at military academies, government defense councils, and even shown behind closed doors. At a diplomatic session, what they saw was surgical. Maya had acted not out of anger, but out of instinct and discipline. Her movements were controlled, her eyes calm. In less than 4 seconds, she had taken down a war legend using no weapon, just technique. And she did it in full compliance with galactic military regulations. The footage was chilling not because of how violent it was, but because of how efficient it was. The galactic reaction, the Yushani Empire, was embarrassed. For centuries, they had held themselves as paragons of martial prowess built for war, evolved for dominance. But now, their greatest living general had been neutralized by a human cadet. It wasn't just about one wrist being broken. It was about what it meant. The Terran embassy responded swiftly, citing the diplomatic agreement that allowed Maya's presence on Virix 9 and reminding the Shani of the Interspecies Cadet Protection Clause. Their official statement was brief: if you touch one of ours again, we'll send someone who doesn't ask first. That line was circulated, quoted, and whispered in military offices across the quadrant. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise delivered. In Earth's typical understated style, back on Virix 9, Maya remained focused, unaffected by the political tremors around her. She continued her drills, completed her combat evaluations, and followed protocol to the letter. But now, the atmosphere around her had changed completely. The alien cadets no longer mocked her. They no longer accidentally bumped into her during sparring. In fact, they began avoiding her. Not out of shame, but out of fear. But some were drawn in not out of fear, but curiosity. One such cadet was Jarnix, a mid-level Zhani combatant known for his loyalty to tradition. He had laughed like the others when Maya first arrived. But after watching her take down General Vortha, his perception shifted. She wasn't just a curiosity anymore, she was something else. He approached her cautiously during mess, sitting across from her at the long steel table. She didn't look up from her protein ration. "I watched the footage again," he said quietly. "You weren't angry." "No," Maya replied, taking a sip from her hydration pouch. "You didn't hesitate either. You just moved." "Because hesitation gets you killed," she said calmly. "Especially against someone bigger, faster, stronger. You can't afford doubt." Jarnix hesitated before asking the next question. "How many others like you does Earth have?" Maya finally looked up, eyes steady and unreadable. "That depends on how many enemies Earth has," Jarnix blinked. The answer chilled him more than any boast could have. Maya's silence speaks? Perhaps. The most unsettling part of the whole event wasn't the violence, it was Maya's lack of pride in it. She didn't brag, she didn't gloat. She didn't retell the event even once. For her, the fight wasn't about honor or reputation. It was about a line being crossed, and a threat being neutralized, exactly what she had been trained to do. Alien instructors reviewed her psychological evaluations. The word they used was contained. Maya Rios was not an unstable predator. She was a disciplined weapon, kept sheathed until drawn. And that made her far more terrifying. A shift in respect. Maya's instructors began to reassess her role in the compound. She was no longer just a token exchange cadet. Her scores in tactical planning, survival analysis, and unarmed combat put her in the top percentile across all species. Even those who had mocked Earth's admission to the galactic military table began to reconsider. The compound's high commander, a veteran named Trellex Voss, rewrote the week's training roster. Maya was placed in mixed-species simulations, not to test her, but to observe how others reacted when she took command. The result was undeniable. Even reluctant Ishani began following her lead. Not because of orders, because she knew what she was doing and they knew she'd get them through alive. The message behind the silence. By the end of the week, Maya Rios had become a symbol not just of Earth's capability, but of its philosophy. Humans don't start fights, but they will end them. Humans don't boast. They prepare, and when provoked, they never hesitate. The galaxy had long thought of humans as emotionally fragile and physically weak. But in that one quiet cadet, they saw the terrifying truth. Humans weren't fearless. They were trained to fight despite fear. A month after the incident with General Vortha, life at Virax 9 seemed to return to normal, at least on the surface. The drills continued. Schedules resumed. Orders were followed. But beneath the calm routine, something fundamental had shifted. In the way the Yeshani cadets treated Cadet Maya Rios. She no longer walked alone in the mess hall. No one dared to test her during sparring drills. Her strength was no longer questioned, nor was her presence mocked. But she wasn't celebrated either. She had become something different, not quite respected, not fully understood. She was an enigma, a quiet storm. The only human in a sea of war-bred titans, and yet somehow the most dangerous one of them all. Then came the Trial of Arms, an annual event hosted by the Shani military to evaluate rising talent from every affiliated species. It was part combat demonstration, part simulation, and part political theater. Every cadet knew doing well here could earn a posting to elite command. Failing meant reassignment to lesser garrisons or worse. This year, for the first time ever, the event would be fully interspecies. Terrans, Hishani, Grelix, and even a few Kravari cadets were scheduled to participate together in a simulated multi-objective combat trial. Mixed teams, real weapon systems. No lethal rounds, but plenty of opportunities for real pain and real humiliation. When the team selection began, Maya waited silently with the others. Team captains, mostly senior Yushani. Cadets took turns choosing their squads. She was passed over again and again. No one wanted her, not because she was weak, but because she was unpredictable, too quiet, too alien, too dangerous. Some feared she'd draw attention, others that she'd show them up. By the time the last team was finalized, Maya stood alone. An instructor frowned. Rios, unassigned. You will serve as auxiliary support for Team D3. That meant she wasn't even part of the official unit. She'd be allowed to follow and assist, but not lead, not fight directly unless ordered. Maya said nothing. She nodded once and took her place. The simulation begins. The trial was divided into 3 parts: infiltration, data extraction, and combat exfiltration. The environment was a massive mock war zone spread across kilometers of terrain, ruined buildings, automated defenses, and enemy drone swarms. Maya's assigned team, D3, was led by a brash Kravari cadet named Loktan, who made it very clear: you follow orders, human. You don't act unless I say so. She simply replied, understood. Their mission started well. The team moved quickly through the infiltration zone, with Maya hanging back. But the cracks began to show during the data extraction phase. They triggered a defense beacon. Enemy. Drones swarmed from 3 directions. Locktan froze. His second-in-command was hit. Their comms were jammed, and half the team was pinned behind collapsed structures. Maya, observing the field from her perch, saw it all unraveling. Seconds passed. Still, no orders came. So she moved. Maya takes control without a word. Maya dropped down from her high position, taking a wide flank through the rubble. She skirted. Drone vision arcs moved silently and reached the team's medic, who was trapped behind a fractured support pillar. Using debris and a smoke grenade, she pulled him out, treated his injury with a field patch, and reactivated his comm beacon. Rest of the team, emboldened, began responding to her short-clipped commands. Drone path resets in 7 seconds. Move now. Suppress left corridor. I'll loop wide and breach. Lock-10 is compromised. Jarnix, your lead. She didn't ask permission, she simply acted, and the team followed. Because everything she did worked in under 12 minutes. Team D3 had recovered the data, neutralized the drones, and exfiltrated through a simulated war zone with 0 casualties, a feat no other team matched that day. The officials were stunned. The debriefing during the after-action review, instructors from every species weighed in. She shouldn't have taken command, said one Kravari officer. She wasn't officially leading the team. Another added, but the Yashani commander, Krelax Vus, stood and cut them off. She didn't take command, he said. She earned it. He turned to Maya. You saw the threat, assessed the field, and made the hard calls. Even the ones your superior failed to. Maya nodded once. I was trained to end fights, not wait for permission to survive them. There was silence in the room. Then applause. Not roaring, not explosive, but real. And it came first from Jarnix, the same cadet who once laughed at her. The simulation was over. The teams had been scored. But the true results of the trial of arms could not be measured in numbers or metrics alone. Whispers of Cadet. Maya Rios's leadership, how she had salvaged a failing mission, commanded with precision, and delivered results no one thought possible, spread like wildfire. Not just within the walls of Virax 9, but far beyond it. Footage of the operation, clipped and shared between military officers and fleet commanders, circulated across the systems. Some dismissed it. Others watched it in silence. But for those who understood warfare, it was a revelation. The question shifted from how did the human do it to how many more like her does Earth have? Legacy of the fight General Threx Vortha, now retired. In disgrace, watched the video of the trial alone in his compound. His once proud arm had been replaced again, but his pride would never recover. Yet in the solitude of defeat, even Vortha, legend of the Shani Empire, was forced to acknowledge the truth. Maya had not humiliated him out of malice. She had done what any true soldier was taught to do: respond with precision when threatened. She didn't hate him. Worse, she didn't care enough to hate him. To her, he wasn't a monster. Just another variable to solve. A threat to neutralize, and that is what disturbed him most. Training ends. But the fear remains. Maya continued her final months of training with little change in demeanor. She remained focused, quiet, and relentless. But the cadets around her had changed. Some treated her with awe, others with wary admiration. A few, like Jarnix, sought to learn from her. He would watch her drills, mimic her techniques, and ask questions late into the evening. She always answered simply, directly. You fight like every second matters, he once said. Because it does, she replied. Gone were the jokes, the sideways glances, the arrogance. In its place, respect. And fear. Graduation day on the final day of the program, the compound hosted a rare full assembly address. High Commander Krelax Voss stood atop the ceremonial platform. Behind him fluttered banners of the participating species Shani, Kravari, Grelic, and now for the first time Terran. Each top cadet received a token of honor, a forged insignia, signifying excellence in combat, leadership, and unity. When Maya's name was called, there was silence for a breath. Then, from the back of the formation, Jarnix clapped. Others followed. Soon the entire compound was applauding, not out of obligation, but recognition. Maya stepped forward, accepted the insignia, and saluted. Her face remained calm, but in her eyes there was a flicker of emotion, not pride, but readiness. She was done proving herself. Now she was waiting for what came next. A quiet message after the ceremony. A visiting diplomat from the Galactic Alliance pulled one of the instructors aside. "She's just one cadet," the diplomat whispered. "Isn't the fear exaggerated?" The instructor replied quietly, "She is one, and that's all it took to change everything here." What the galaxy finally understood, it wasn't just about Maya Rios. It was about what she represented. For generations, the galaxy had underestimated humans, seen them as newcomers, bright, inventive, occasionally clever, but biologically fragile. Most species dismissed Earth as a curiosity, a death world anomaly filled with emotional, reckless bipeds who somehow survived despite themselves. But now the truth was impossible to ignore. Humans survived because they had no choice. They endured because no one endured for them. And when tested, they didn't hesitate. They didn't posture. They just acted with cold precision and terrifying efficiency. Maya wasn't feared because she broke Vortha's wrist. She was feared because she did it calmly, then went back to training. Because when her team was failing, she didn't complain. She took command. And they followed her, because humans didn't seek control. They earned it when it mattered most. The final lesson that fear wasn't rooted in their size, strength, or weapons. It was in their discipline, their resolve, and their focus. It was in the fact that, when threatened, humans didn't become monsters. They became answers, efficient, swift, unshakable. And as every alien commander, cadet, and diplomat watching the trial's recordings would say in hushed voices,